Hey everybody, PDerrickS here. I just wanted to talk to you about my superpower, which is reading. And that might strike you as funny, but I got some time to kill waiting on my ride to come back to come get me from the airport. And I'm all disheveled and tired, and this seems to be the trend of these live videos. But when I find time, I want to talk to you and see who's out there and maybe talk back and forth. And even if you're not watching this live, go ahead and leave me a comment. I'm going to see it, and I'll be able to reply to it. Hey, thanks for watching. So I'm talking about reading and how it's a superpower, and this is something that I've brought to a lot of young people. I've gotten to do a lot of ministry with young people in the past, and reading is a superpower. People think of superpowers, it's a common question kids ask each other: what kind of superpower would you like? You want to fly, you want to be invincible, you want to push buttons, you don't know what you're pushing. I'm pushing buttons, I don't know what they do. And people ask, what kind of superpower do you want? And they dream and they imagine about being more powerful than they are. And something I've tried to put in young lives that I've been blessed to impact and have influence with is that reading is a real superpower. Hey, the Hobsons, how you doing? Natasha, I hope you're doing good. Reading is a superpower. Tell your son this. Tell your boy this. Tell your kids this. Reading is a superpower. With reading, and I'm just going to jump to the end. We're just going to take a shortcut because I don't know how long I have. I'm going to get a phone call. I'm going to have to get off. So just to jump to the end, shortcut, and then we'll hash it out more if we have time. Through reading, you can read people's minds. You could read. People have shared their minds in books, and you could read their minds. You could read their feelings. You could read how they felt around historical events. You could read how they felt in a situation you might encounter in the future. Through reading, you can time travel, like literally. They actually wrote this 100 years ago, 300 years ago, and you can read it and read their mind and their perspective, and you could be there. And so through reading, you could read people's minds, you can time travel, you could gain other people's experience. Some people wish they could just make better decisions. Well, maybe if you watched other people make decisions, maybe if you learned about the decisions that others had made in the past in similar situations or situations you might encounter likewise in the future, that then you'd be able to make a better decision. So reading really, truly, actually is a superpower. It's a great way to experience more. Some young people wish they could travel more. Great answer to that. You want to have the teleportation superpower. Read about places that are far from you. Read about the places you want to go. Read books by people who lived there. Read even travel guides and things like that, and you can be transported there. Now, reading not only has those abilities to give you abilities beyond what's natural, and really, I can't remember which tribe it was. There was a native tribe that actually threatened to throw a guy out because he had created a written language for them. If you know the answer to this, please just throw it up here. I'll give you credit. But there was a Native American tribe, and there was a man from their tribe who had come and been a part of the wider culture and learned how to read and decided he wanted to take it was in the Southwest, wanted to create a written language for his people so that they could read and read their own history and things like that. And he made it, and they almost threw him out of the tribe, saying it was witchcraft, saying that it was magic, and they didn't want it. And it is a sort of magic that you could time travel. You could hop from place to place. You could read minds through the power of reading. And so there's all those benefits, but also it'll give you a better vocabulary. It'll make you more wise because you're learning through other people's experiences. The best teacher we have, I think most people would agree, the best teacher is personal experience. Well, now when you're reading, you can gather other people's experiences and you can learn their lessons, and you don't have to go through the heartache or the headache or the trial or the pain of learning that lesson. You can just reach into that biography and take that for yourself and learn that lesson, and you can grow exponentially because you could read 5 lifetimes in a month, read 5 biographies in a month, and you could read 5 people's lifetimes and their experiences and their lessons and their decisions and what they wish would have gone better, things like that, and so you could live the accumulation of a distilled 5 lifetimes. And so I think that's one reason that you find that readers are leaders. Is that the phrase that people use all the time? Hey, real quick, while we're here, if you have a favorite book that you wish other people would see, we've got a bunch of people watching this right now, go ahead and throw up your favorite book. If you got a favorite book, a friend of mine shared that I got to hang out with Ryan not too long ago, just a couple days ago, and he shared that he had read Hatchet. What a good book for boys that is. That's another thing, is that reading will expose you to things that you maybe wouldn't have been able to be exposed to before. Maybe you'll learn about hunting and fishing. Maybe you'll learn about warfare, even though you never planned to be in the military. You'll learn about things that your life path wouldn't take you to experience on your own. So if you got a favorite book, go ahead and share it in here. I'll go ahead and say the Bible, so I'll get that out of the way as far as favorite books. But if you've got a book you want to suggest to other people, go ahead and suggest it out there. And so even fiction is valuable to a certain extent. People can get lost in fiction. People can, read fiction to their detriment, I guess. You could do anything overboard and to your detriment. But fiction teaches you how to write, teaches you how to phrase arguments, and teaches you how to say things in a way that's acceptable. It teaches you how to share a story. And later, when you need to tell a story, I was talking, not even a week ago, about the power of stories to influence others. If you want to learn how to craft a really good story, if you want to hold people's attention, maybe you should read some books that hold people's attention, that deliver a story, that teach a lesson, that other people are impacted by, and then you could learn, not only receive from the story, but receive from the craft, and say, okay, so that's how they constructed it. First this part, then that part. First, you need a protagonist, and then you need a climax, you need a difficulty, or, there needs to be a conclusion, things like that. So, yeah, reading is a superpower. It really actually is. Maybe you have seen some benefits from reading. Go ahead and share those with somebody. Shoot out a comment. I think it shows up on everybody's on the video for everybody if you share a comment. But I'll read whatever comments come across if they're appropriate. Books that I've loved. So reading is a superpower. Books that I've loved. I really, really loved the autobiography of Benjamin Franklin. So it's his own words. And you kind of have to, think about that. He's not going to write too much that's too embarrassing about himself. But he does share some failures, and he does share what was important to him. And it's kind of like Ben Franklin was my friend now, because I got to kind of peek into his life and read what it is that he wanted to share about himself. Another book a biography that I really, really enjoyed was PDerrickS, I think was the title. It's a biography, so written by somebody else, a biography of Theodore Roosevelt. And it's about, the rise of Theodore Roosevelt. PDerrickS is the next book after that, which actually I haven't read. But The Rise of Theodore Roosevelt is an excellent book. I never knew so much about him, and you get to see how he grew and how he developed and how he came to be the president and where his motivations were and what his background was and things like that. It's a great book. UPC preachers all read Louis L'Amour, it seems, but those are good books. They're fiction, but they talk about real struggles and choices people have to make, about morality, about taking a stand. Very often there's a stand that has to be taken, somebody needs to be helped, things like that, and in that fiction you learn how to be a storyteller, which I think might be one of the reasons the UPC has the best preachers in the world. Because a bunch of guys got together and read a really good storyteller, and now they know how to share a story in a way that's compelling, that story being the gospel or a testimony of God's power and grace. And Natasha Hobson, if you guys can't see it, said The Bronze Bow is a great historical fiction book centered around the time Jesus starts his ministry and the zealots planned to rebel against Rome. I have heard about that book, and I've never read it. Thank you for sharing that. Yes, historical fiction is really fun. I love historical fiction. Bridging those two. So Louis L'Amour wrote a historical fiction called Sitka, that has to do with Alaska. And I was leading a missions trip of young people down to Sitka. And so I brought the book with me and read it as I was going, and finished it in the trip, because it took us 4 days to get to Sitka. Drive up to Toke, down to Haines, get on a ferry for a day, get on a ferry for a half day. I finished it on the way, and it was an incredible book. It was a really good book, and it's in the setting of that time period where Russia Russia sold Alaska to the United States. Chief Stealth: History of Seattle, Washington. Oh, very cool. There's another book that was given by Tina Kodala. That suggestion was. There's another book that I really enjoyed and I actually gave to my dad, and I don't know if he ever read it, but I wound up buying it for myself and reading it. And it's the history of a city, a history of Seattle. It's called The Sons of the Prophets, and it's prophets like money, and it's the history of Seattle. And I never thought the history of a city could be so interesting. And now I want to read about I hope that there's books like that that are as engaging and as interesting and as well written as Sons of the Prophets was. I would love to read about the way back history of New Orleans or New York or other cities like that that have an interesting past. I think they seem to be interesting places today. Maybe they have an interesting past. Other books that I've enjoyed. I really enjoy sermonic books of sermons. They're not always easy to come by, but I like them. But that's kind of the where I live, with sermons, with the telling of ideas and the truths of God, and putting them out in such a way that people will receive them and be moved to get closer to God. I like sermonic books. I have never been into poetry. A lot of people really love books of poetry. I've never been into that. Maybe I'm not old enough. Maybe I'm not romantic enough. I don't know. But go ahead, share your books, whatever books you like that have impacted you. I think it's important for young people to read, not just because it's a thing you should do, but because there's so much advantage and benefit to them. A young person who reads is going to be so far past their peers that they're going to have like an actual edge in life on everybody else. And there was a woman who used to work with me. She worked at the jewelry counter in Nordstrom, and I think I was like 18 working in the cafe at Nordstrom there in Tacoma. And she would describe me to my friends. She'd say he's so worldly, and she didn't mean that as being corrupted like so much of the world is. But what she meant was that I had a broad view and that I knew things about a little bit of everything. And it wasn't that I had ever traveled. I had never traveled out of the country at that time. It wasn't that I was, exposed to so much because my social circle was so big. It was just that I read, and I retained what I read. As far as some people struggle with reading, that's a real thing. Some people really struggle with reading. I've really gotten into audiobooks lately because I find myself driving more. I find myself working with my hands, and I want to also stimulate my mind. And so I've been downloading audiobooks and listening to those, and those have been great. I'm really enjoying those. And you can get them free from your library. You can actually, get them off the shelf in a lot of libraries. But my library, and probably yours, has a free app that I can stream.